Rain hammered the observation dome, each droplet splintering into tiny prisms of light. Cale Rowan's boots slid on the wet metal deck as he adjusted the straps of his suit. He stared out over Cerulea's coral seas, an expanse of glowing blues and greens that shifted like living light. Something pulsed beneath the surface, rhythmic and deliberate, almost as if the water itself was breathing. Cale's heart thumped in his chest. Curiosity burned hotter than fear. He had read reports of strange sonar readings, patterns too precise to be natural, but nothing had prepared him for the sight of it in person. The station was silent except for the hum of failing generators. Signs of hasty evacuation cluttered the hallways, cracked panels, scattered tools, and a few personal effects left behind. Cale frowned. "Where is everyone?" he muttered to himself, voice swallowed by the wind. He tapped into his handheld scanner, watching as flickers of movement registered deep in the water. Whatever lived down there moved fast, intelligent, careful. Cale descended the spiral ladder to the docking bay. The research submersible waited, lights cutting through the stormy night. He checked the oxygen tanks, heart still racing with anticipation. "Just a short dive," he whispered. "See what's making those patterns." He had trained for months for this moment, yet his hands shook as he sealed the hatch. The water embraced him like liquid glass. The submersible cut through the waves, lights piercing the darkness. Bioluminescent streaks shimmered around the hull, responding to his movements, twisting and spiraling like dancers in an underwater ballroom. Cale's breath caught. These weren't random sparks. They formed sequences, patterns that repeated and evolved like a language. He leaned closer to the console, trying to decode them. "It's communicating," he breathed. His pulse quickened with excitement. A sudden tremor shook the submersible. Warning lights flashed as the water glowed red, then faded to deep violet. Cale gripped the controls, adrenaline surging. What the hell? The readings spiked, displaying something massive moving beneath. Not just large but impossible, too big for any known marine creature. Cale's mind raced. Could this be what the old reports hinted at? The legends of the moon's guardians weren't just myths. He activated external cameras. The ocean floor shimmered, revealing towering coral structures, some shaped like spires, others like vast archways. They seemed alive, pulsing in unison with the patterns above. Cale's heart swelled with awe. He had always dreamed of discovering alien life, but this was more than life. It was intelligence woven into every strand of coral, a civilization hidden in plain sight. Suddenly, a shadow darted past the hull. Cale's stomach dropped. It was enormous, moving faster than the currents, fluid and precise. He fumbled for the sonar, scanning the depths, but the readings were chaotic, almost indecipherable. The shadow disappeared into a coral canyon, leaving the water rippling in unnatural swirls. Cale's mouth went dry. "It's watching me," he whispered, a shiver running down his spine. His hands tightened on the controls. Fear prickled at his nerves, but beneath it all, curiosity roared. He had to know more. A soft pulse of light radiated from the coral towers below, spreading through the water. Cale felt it in his chest, a vibration that resonated in sync with his heartbeat. It was a message, or maybe a warning. He tried to mimic the pulse using the submersible's lights, matching the rhythm as best he could. The water around him shimmered brighter, almost an acknowledgement. A sense of connection flared, fleeting and fragile. He was an intruder, yet somehow invited. Then the submersible rocked violently. Alarms blared as another massive tremor shook the water. Cale's console flashed red, structural instability in the coral canyon. The shadow returned, closer this time, moving around him in a circle, assessing. Cale's mind raced. Should he retreat? Or take the risk and follow it deeper? He swallowed, forcing his fear down. "I need to see this," he murmured, determination cutting through panic. He plunged the submersible toward the shadow, lights illuminating the swirling, glowing maze below. The shadow paused, and for a moment, Cale thought it watched him, aware of his intent. Then it vanished into the darkness again, leaving a trail of glowing bioluminescence behind, leading toward a chasm that sank into the ocean's depths like a black wound. Cale's breath hitched. This was no ordinary creature. This was a guardian of something ancient, a sentinel of the coral moon, and it had chosen to reveal itself, or test him. The submersible's lights flickered as the currents intensified. Cale clutched the controls, every nerve alight with tension and wonder. He felt the pulse again, stronger, echoing through the hull and into his chest, as if the moon itself was alive and breathing around him. He realized the discovery here was bigger than any science mission. It could rewrite humanity's understanding of life. A sudden surge of movement beneath the canyon wall made Kale's stomach drop. The water erupted as the massive shadow lunged upward, revealing a shape so immense it dwarfed the submersible, its surface glinting like living coral. Kale's eyes widened. The pulse intensified, reverberating in his skull. He could feel the creature's presence, vast and sentient, radiating intelligence and power. He had crossed a line, entered a world humans weren't meant to reach, yet he could not look away. Then, without warning, the shadow disappeared, leaving only the quiet glow of the coral towers. The submersible trembled, alarms screaming. Kale's heart raced, his pulse pounding in his ears. He knew he had seen something extraordinary, something that could change everything. But before he could react, a new sonar reading spiked. A form even larger than the first, approaching with deliberate speed. Kale's stomach churned as he whispered, "This is only the beginning." The water around him pulsed violently, red and blue streaks twisting like fingers reaching out. He gripped the controls, realizing the ocean itself was alive, aware and ready to challenge him. And somewhere deep beneath the glowing coral, something ancient stirred, awakening fully for the first time in centuries. The water pressed against Kale Rowan's submersible like a living wall, its weight a constant reminder of the alien world around him. He could still feel the pulse from the Guardian beneath the coral towers, a vibration that had lodged itself deep in his chest. Every nerve in his body screamed both wonder and dread. He adjusted the lights and peered into the shadowy depths. The glowing trail left by the first massive creature swirled like a path leading him into the unknown. Kale status. The voice of Dr. Leora Venn crackled over the comms. Static hissed through her words, but the urgency was clear. "You're too deep. Pull back. This isn't a mission for one human." Kale swallowed hard. "I see them, Leora. I think they're waiting. They want me to follow." His voice trembled, a mixture of excitement and fear. The submersible's hull creaked under pressure, every sound amplified in the silent water. The first shimmer of movement caught his eye. It wasn't like the previous shadow. These were smaller, more agile figures, gliding through the coral like dancers in a ballet. Their bioluminescent patterns blinked in sequences, complex, deliberate, a silent language in motion. Kale's stomach tightened. "They're sentinels," he whispered. "Guardians of the Guardians." He edged the submersible closer to one of the coral towers. A sentinel paused, hovering mid-water, then tilted its translucent body toward him. Its glow pulsed rhythmically, almost like a heartbeat. Kale's heart raced to match it. He tried to interpret the sequence of lights, matching his sub's pulses in a crude mimicry. The sentinel responded, and for a moment, a connection sparked, fragile, fleeting, almost human in its curiosity. Then the water shivered violently. The current twisted unnaturally, tugging at the submersible with alarming force. Kale fought to maintain control, sweat stinging his eyes. What is happening?" he muttered. The sentinels darted around, forming a moving wall between him and the coral canyon. Something massive was coming, and the smaller guardians seemed to brace, almost protective. Kale tapped the sonar and the readings spiked. A shape appeared, larger than anything he had ever imagined, stretching across the canyon like a moving mountain. Its bioluminescent skin shifted in patterns of blue and red, reflecting anger or warning. He couldn't tell which. Fear clawed at him, but awe anchored him in place. This was a creature older than the moon itself, its consciousness vast, intelligent, and aware of every movement he made. The sentinel nearest to him pulsed brightly, nudging the submersible with a gentle force. Kale's breath hitched. It wasn't trying to harm him. It was guiding him, placing him in a position to witness something impossible. His pulse raced, adrenaline and reverence mingling. He followed the lead, moving closer to the giant form looming in the depths. Suddenly, the colossal guardian exhaled a stream of glowing particles. The submersible's lights reflected off them, creating a cascade of colors that danced across the coral spires. Kale's eyes watered from the beauty. The currents grew stronger, spinning the glowing particles into spirals, almost like an underwater storm. The sentinels formed a perimeter around him, protecting him as if he were a fragile part of this living world. "Kale, you need to surface now." Leora's voice was sharp, panicked. "I don't know what you found, but you're in danger. Get out before it's too late." He hesitated. Danger was real, but so was discovery. He couldn't abandon this moment. The massive guardian tilted, revealing an expanse of intricate coral growths on its back, structures that resembled towers, bridges, and tunnels. Kale's stomach clenched. These were not just creatures. They were architects, builders of a civilization hidden beneath the waves. And the sentinels? They were the protectors of this secret. A sudden jolt rocked the submersible. The water darkened as another shadow approached, faster and more aggressive than the first. The sentinels swarmed, forming a defensive barrier. Cale's hands shook as he maneuvered between the currents, watching the dance of light and shadow. He realized that the coral moon was not passive. It was alive, sentient, and fully aware of intruders. His breath came in short, ragged bursts. He had never felt so small, so insignificant, and yet so alive. Every pulse of light, every swirl of color spoke to him in a language he barely understood. And in that chaos, a question burned in his mind. Why had these creatures allowed him here at all? The approaching shadow hesitated, circling the sentinels. Cale's scanner went wild, recording impossible readings of energy and motion. The guardian paused, then retreated slightly, leaving a path that led deeper into the coral canyon. The sentinels shifted, forming a tunnel of light. Cale's chest tightened. This was an invitation, or a test. "Okay," he whispered, gripping the controls. "I follow, but carefully." His pulse synced with the rhythm of the sentinel's glow. The water itself seemed to breathe with him, alive and aware. He descended into the canyon, guided by creatures whose motives he could barely grasp. Then the current surged violently, pulling the submersible toward a narrow rift in the coral, its edges jagged and sharp. Cale fought to resist, but the water was too strong. He braced himself, adrenaline and fear coiling tight in his chest. As he hurtled into the darkness, a voice whispered in his mind, a strange, resonant sound, like the echo of the ocean itself calling him forward. He realized then that the Guardians were not just watching, they were deciding. And whatever lay ahead would test not only his courage but the very essence of what it meant to be human. The submersible plunged into the shadowed rift, the sentinels flaring around him, and somewhere deep within the glowing coral, a presence stirred, aware that a human had crossed the line into its sacred domain. The submersible shuddered as it slipped deeper into the shadowed rift, the walls of coral pressing in like the arms of a living labyrinth. Cale Rowan's pulse hammered in his ears, echoing the silent rhythm of the sentinel's glows that surrounded him. Each pulse felt like a heartbeat not just of the creatures, but of the entire moon itself. The deeper he went, the more alien and impossible the world became. "Cale, can you hear me?" Leora's voice came through in fragments, swallowed by static. "Your readings are off the charts. Whatever you're seeing down there, get back. Now." He swallowed hard and whispered to himself, "I can't. I have to see." The voice trembled, but determination burned in his eyes. The canyon walls shifted with shadows that seemed almost alive, twisting and curling like they were breathing. Strange patterns of light rippled across the coral, reflecting in his wide, unblinking eyes. Every twist, every shimmer made him feel both awe and dread. A low hum began to resonate through the water. At first, Cale thought it was the sub's engines, but the frequency deepened and expanded. The hum transformed into distinct pulses, almost like a song. The sentinels responded, their glows flickering faster, communicating in a silent chorus. Cale pressed his hand against the console, trying to track the rhythm. It was a message, and somehow he understood its intent. Warning, curiosity, a challenge. Suddenly, movement erupted from the shadows. Massive forms, larger than the sentinels but smaller than the primary guardian, surged from hidden caverns. Their bodies shimmered with the same bioluminescence, but their shapes were jagged and threatening, more predatory. Cale's stomach knotted as he realized these were not friendly observers. They were hunters, enforcers of the coral moon's hidden hierarchy. He twisted the submersible, trying to avoid collision. The hunters darted around him, glowing spines slicing through the water like living daggers. Stay calm," Cale muttered, but adrenaline tightened his throat. Each movement felt like walking a tightrope between survival and annihilation. One wrong turn, and the hunters would tear him apart before he could even scream. A sentinel zipped beside him, its light flashing rapidly. It nudged the submersible, almost like urging him forward. Cale realized the sentinels were not only protecting him, they were guiding him. "Lead the way," he whispered to them, hope flickering. His eyes scanned the rift ahead, where shadows seemed to converge. The canyon narrowed, jagged coral spikes forming a labyrinthine passage. He swallowed, knowing this was a trial by fire, or by water in this case. As he maneuvered through the passage, the hunters pursued with relentless precision. Cale's hands flew over the controls, navigating spiraling tunnels, dodging razor-sharp formations that scraped and banged against the hull. Sparks of panic flared in his mind. Why am I here? Why me? The question echoed in the submersible, unanswered. Then he saw it, A chamber opening ahead, enormous and filled with floating structures that looked alive. Coral formations twisted into arches, bridges, and spires, pulsating with a faint internal light. Shadows danced across the walls, creating forms that were almost humanoid, silent observers of some ancient ritual. Kale's breath caught. The hunters paused at the entrance, almost reverent, while the sentinels formed a glowing shield around him. Kale adjusted the lights, scanning the chamber. Strange, translucent shapes floated in the water, almost like fish, but their eyes glimmered with intelligence. They moved in patterns, synchronized, communicating in a language of light and motion. He realized the moon was not just inhabited, it was organized, structured, alive in ways humans had never imagined. And he was the first human to witness it. A sudden surge of water slammed into the submersible, tossing him violently. He gritted his teeth, holding the controls tight. From the shadows, another guardian appeared, larger than any he had seen, its form coiling like a leviathan. Its glow was different, colder, warning, almost furious. The hunters flinched back, and the sentinels shone brighter, forming a protective cocoon around Kale. Kale, surface immediately. Leora's voice cut through, urgent, desperate. I don't know what's happening down there, but you're in way over your head. He swallowed hard, torn between fear and fascination. I can't, he murmured, mesmerized by the Guardian's display. The Leviathan moved closer, exhaling streams of light and energy that rippled through the chamber. The patterns shifted, revealing something extraordinary, a massive network of coral, connected like a neural web. This was the heart of the coral moon, and Kale realized the sentinels and hunters were its protectors, its immune system. The Leviathan's eyes, if they could be called that, locked onto him. He felt a pulse in his mind, almost like the Guardian was probing his thoughts, questioning his presence. Fear and awe collided, but in that instant Kale understood. This was no longer just an observation. He had entered the core of a civilization older than humanity, and it was evaluating him as one might a potential threat, or a savior. A sudden vibration ran through the chamber. The sentinels flared violently, and the Leviathan recoiled slightly. Something massive stirred in the depths below, unseen, but its presence was undeniable. The hunters hissed, retreating into the shadows, while the sentinels formed a tighter perimeter. Kale's heart pounded. He felt the weight of a secret that could change everything humans believed about life in the universe. The submersible hovered at the edge of the chamber, lights flickering, sensors overloading. Kale's chest tightened with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. The Guardians had accepted him for now, but the deeper, unseen forces were awakening. And one thought burned in his mind. Whatever lurked below, it was bigger, older, and far more dangerous than anything he had faced so far. The water shifted around the chamber, sending ripples of glowing light in all directions, and deep below, something enormous moved silently, aware that a human had reached the heart of its world, and it was deciding whether he would survive the next moment. Kale's heart hammered in his chest as the water around the chamber thickened, almost alive with anticipation. The glow from the sentinels cast flickering shadows across the submersible, making the coral walls twist like living fingers. Below, the enormous presence he had sensed in Part 3 stirred, sending ripples that shook the very foundations of the coral structures. The Leviathan had moved closer, its massive coils brushing the chamber floor with deliberate, terrifying grace. Kale, you need to get out. Now. Leora's voice crackled through the comms, urgent and strained. Sensors show massive energy readings. I don't even know what you're touching down there. I can't leave, Kale whispered, awe mixing with fear. I need to see. I need to understand. His hand trembled on the console, gripping it like a lifeline. The Leviathan's glowing eyes fixed on him, pulsing in rhythm with the chamber's strange energy. For a moment he thought it might strike, but instead, it coiled upward, exposing its full, monumental form. The sheer size of the creature crushed him with its magnitude. Its body was longer than his submersible could fathom, armored with bioluminescent plates that shifted color like molten water. The energy radiating from it was almost physical, pressing against his chest, making him gasp. The Leviathan's awakening was not just a physical presence. It was intelligence, history, and power condensed into a living being that had slumbered for centuries. Suddenly, a sharp vibration shook the submersible. The sentinels around him flared in response, creating a protective dome of light. Kale gritted his teeth, trying to maintain control as massive coral spires quivered and cracked around him. From the shadows of the chamber, smaller predators, hunters, darted forward, drawn to the Leviathan's movement. Kale realized the delicate balance of this world was tipping, and he was caught in the middle. Focus, Kale. You have to find the neural nexus. Leora shouted, panic in her voice. It's the only way to communicate with it. We can't let it fully awaken in anger. Kale's mind raced. The neural nexus. Yes, the shimmering network of coral below the Leviathan's coils. It pulsed like a heartbeat, threads of light connecting the sentinels, hunters, and even the Leviathan itself. He maneuvered closer, adrenaline pushing him forward despite the danger. Every movement was a negotiation between life and death. He could feel the Leviathan's awareness probing him, testing his intentions. The Leviathan's voice, if it could be called that, vibrated through the water, a deep resonance that shook Kale's very bones. He felt emotions he had no words for: warning, curiosity, fury, and something like expectation. The hunters darted nervously, sensing the Leviathan's agitation. The sentinels surged to block Kale, their lights forming protective walls. He knew one wrong move could provoke the ancient creature into a frenzy. He reached the nexus and extended the submersible's probe toward it. The moment it touched the glowing threads, the water shivered with energy. Streams of light flowed into the sub, coursing through its systems and his mind. Images flashed before his eyes: histories of the coral moon, battles with invaders, rituals of guardianship, and warnings of beings who had dared to take more than they should. He gasped, overwhelmed, tears stinging his eyes. The Leviathan lowered its massive head, its eyes studying him more closely than ever. Kale felt something unexpected, a spark of recognition. The creature was sensing his mind and somehow understanding it. He realized that the Sentinel's trust had not been misplaced. They had guided him here because he carried something different from previous intruders: a human's potential for empathy, for connection, for change. A sudden surge of water erupted from the chamber floor. From the darkness beneath, massive tendrils of coral and energy reached upward, threatening to engulf the submersible. Kale gritted his teeth, twisting the controls, narrowly avoiding collision. The hunters scattered in panic, and the sentinels flared brighter, forming a protective barrier around him. The Leviathan's coils tightened, sending shockwaves that pushed against the walls, threatening to collapse everything. Kale's breath came in ragged gasps. I think it's testing me," he murmured, fear and exhilaration mingling in his chest. "It wants to know if I'm worthy." The Nexus pulsed violently, sending waves of energy into the Leviathan. For a moment the massive guardian froze, its glow dimming as if considering him. Then without warning the Leviathan lunged. Kale's heart stopped. The water churned violently as the creature's immense body moved with terrifying speed. But instead of attacking, it coiled around the Nexus, protecting it, its glow flaring in a sudden blinding explosion of light. Kale's eyes watered, the submersible shaking violently, yet he felt a strange sense of relief. A temporary bond, fragile but real, had been formed. The chamber stilled. The hunters retreated, the sentinels dimmed their protective glow, and the Leviathan floated above the Nexus, massive and imposing but calm. Kale slumped back in the sub, drenched in adrenaline. He whispered almost to himself, I survived. And I think it's waiting for something from me." A new pulse rippled through the water, deeper and slower than before. Something was stirring far below the chamber, in the dark depths the Leviathan had never disturbed. Kale's stomach nodded. Whatever it was massive, intelligent, and hungry. And it had just sensed him. The water trembled with a slow, menacing rhythm, and far below, in the abyssal dark, something ancient and colossal began to awaken, aware that a human had reached the heart of its world, and it was moving toward the surface. Kale's hands shook as he gripped the controls of the submersible, the pulses from the abyssal darkness still rippling through the water. The Leviathan loomed above the Nexus, its immense body glowing with a calm but cautious energy. Yet Kale could feel it. Something far older, far more dangerous than anything they had encountered, was rising from the depths, drawn by the resonance of the Nexus, and by him. "Leora, it's coming," Kale whispered into the comms, voice tight with fear. "Something massive, something alive. It knows we're here." On the surface, Leora's voice was sharp, urgent. "You have one chance, Kale. Connect with the Nexus fully. It's the only way to control the energy, or the coral moon will be destroyed." Kale swallowed hard, sweat stinging his eyes. His heart pounded against his ribs as he maneuvered the probe deeper into the glowing threads. The Nexus responded instantly, sending a wave of light spiraling outward. The Leviathan coiled protectively, sensing the connection. He felt the memories of the coral moon flood his mind, The Guardians, their duties, the battles long forgotten, and the silent promise that this world had always waited for someone who could understand. Then from the black depths, a shadow emerged, vast and immense. Its outline distorted the coral's bioluminescence, an enormous silhouette that dwarfed even the Leviathan. Kale gasped, every instinct screaming danger. Its presence was oppressive, intelligent, ancient, and it radiated a hunger that seemed to reach into his very thoughts. Kale, it's analyzing you, Leora's voice trembled. Whatever you do, don't provoke it. Show it purpose, not fear. Kale nodded, though she could not see him. He extended his mind into the nexus, reaching out with thoughts and emotions instead of commands. He focused on balance, on coexistence, on the possibility that humans could bridge the gap between the Coral Moon's guardians and whatever lay below. The Leviathan's glow brightened, reinforcing his signal, and for a moment, the abyssal shadow hesitated. You can do this, Kale, he murmured to himself. You can make them see that we don't have to fight. The massive creature from the depths surged closer, water churning violently around it. The submersible rocked on the waves of energy, alarms blaring. Kale's fingers flew over the controls, stabilizing it while his mind remained in the nexus. The Leviathan rumbled, a low vibration that echoed in his bones, and Kale realized it was communicating a single powerful message: trust. With every ounce of focus, Kale projected his intentions outward: calm, connection, understanding. The shadow hesitated, the violent currents slowing as if the being itself were trying to interpret him. Then a strange phenomenon occurred. Light from the nexus began to spiral downward, forming a shimmering bridge toward the abyss. The Leviathan extended a massive coil, touching the shadow lightly, almost reverently. Kale's eyes widened. The creature below shifted its massive head, revealing an eye the size of his submersible. But there was no aggression in its gaze, only curiosity, caution, and intelligence. It tested him, sensing his intent, and Kale held his breath, aware that a single misstep could provoke annihilation. Then, as if understanding his plea, the shadow slowly lowered, its form settling into the rhythm of the nexus. The energy from the Coral Moon pulsed in harmony, linking the Leviathan, the Sentinels, and this ancient guardian into a single synchronized heartbeat. Kale felt a wave of relief, exhilaration, and awe sweep through him. For the first time, the Coral Moon was unified, its guardians no longer fragmented, and humans, fragile, small, yet capable of understanding, had played a role. He exhaled, voice trembling. It's working. They're listening. From the submersible's viewport, he watched as the Leviathan lowered to meet the abyssal guardian halfway, their bioluminescent patterns intertwining in a dance of light and energy. The smaller predators and sentinels adjusted instinctively, falling into patterns that Kale had never imagined possible. The Coral Moon itself seemed to breathe, alive with a new equilibrium, no longer on the brink of chaos. Leora's voice broke through the comms: "Awe.